Welcome back to another episode of Clone Brewing. Today we're going to be brewing a classic English ale as taken from the book Clone Brew's Recipe for 200 Commercial Beers. Today's brew is going to be Old Speckled Hen. So before we get stuck into the brew day, we're going to have a look at the recipe as taken from the book and visit Brewfather to input our ingredients, and then we'll be back with some brew day footage.
Okay, so let's look at this recipe. The description, first of all, this amber English ale was first brewed to celebrate the 50th anniversary of a famous MG car factory in Oxfordshire. Old Speckled Hen arrives with an off-white, creamy head atop a light amber body. It draws you in with its malt and butterscotch aroma. The initial flavour is malty and sweet with a dry, slightly bitter aftertaste. Okay, so let's have a look at the specs here. It's a English pale ale. We're looking for an original gravity of between 1.052 and 1.053. We're looking for IBUs of 35, an SRM of 12, which roughly translates to about 23 ABC, an ABV of around 5.2. This recipe is designed for 5 gallons or 18.9 litres, and we're expecting a final gravity of between 1.010 and 1.012. As always, when using recipes from this particular book, the recipe is designed for steeping grains, but we're going to use the all grain method. So let's have a read about what it says here. So mash 8 pounds or 3.6 kilograms of British 2-row pale malt, 4 ounces or 113 grams of British wheat malt, and the specialty grain at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65.5 degrees Celsius for 90 minutes. We'll find out in a moment what that specialty grain is. Add 5.6 HBU, which is 27% less than the extract recipe, of the bittering hops and the cane sugar. So cane sugar going into this one for 90 minutes of the boil. So a 90-minute boil. And then finally add the flavour hops and the Irish moss for the last 15 minutes of the boil and the aroma hops for the last minute. Interesting. So what are the specialty grains? So it's recommending 340 grams of British crystal malt at 55 Lovibond. So that's a light crystal malt. 227 grams of cane sugar. And then in terms of hops, it's recommending 28 grams of Challenger at 7.7 alpha acids. That's at 90 minutes as your bittering hop. And then we're looking for 14 grams of East Kent Goldings and 14 grams of Challenger with around 15 minutes remaining, as well as your Irish Moss or Whirlflock tablet. And then around 28 grams of East Kent Goldings in for the final minute as an aroma hop. In terms of yeast for this brew, it's recommending Y yeast 1084 Irish ale yeast or Y yeast 1028 London ale yeast, and it's recommending that we ferment between 20 and 22 degrees Celsius. So I'm probably going to go around 20 degrees. 22 seems a bit high for this one. So now that we have the recipe in order, let's jump across to Brewfather. As you will see here, I've already input all of the ingredients on here. So I just want to point out a few things here because you will probably notice on the left-hand side that the amounts are slightly different. So I've scaled this recipe up to be a 23-litre batch as opposed to the 5-gallon or 19-litre batch. And I've also used the OG feature here as well to make sure that we're getting an OG of around 1.052. So what that gives us essentially for our fermentables or our mash is 4.2 kilograms. I'm using finest Maris Otter pale ale malt from Crisp, 360 grams of light crystal malt, again from Crisp, 240 grams of cane sugar and 120 grams of wheat malt from Crisp. Looking across onto our hop additions, we're going to go with 25 grams of Challenger, which is an 8% alpha acid hop at 90 minutes, and then 14 grams of Challenger and 14 grams of East Kent Goldings at 15 minutes. So again, the Challenger at 8% alpha acids and the EKG at 5.5. And then finally, into the boil, 28 grams of East Kent Goldings with 1 minute left of the boil. So, as mentioned a moment ago, I am going to use an dry yeast on this one. So we're going to go with Lallemand London style ESB dry yeast. And what else do we need to look at here? I'm going to ferment this beer at 20 degrees for 10 days, and then we'll cold crash. Well, obviously the 10 days may be slightly different depending on how it ferments out. We're going to mash in at 65 degrees for 90 minutes and mash out for 10 minutes at 75 degrees. In terms of our water, as always, I'm using reverse osmosis water, and I've tapped in the English ale water profile in here. So what that means is we're adding 0.2 grams of calcium chloride into the mash, 0.99 of Epsom salt into the mash, and 1.04 of gypsum, and then into our sparge, 0.2 calcium chloride, 1 gram of Epsom salt, and 1.06 of gypsum. We're looking for 15.2 litres of mash water and 15.42 litres of sparge water. So I think that's about it. So yeah, now that everything is all ready to go, the final thing I'll just point out here, our IBUs are at 35. So the reason I came to these numbers in terms of the hops is we added in some kind of rough numbers based on the recipe, and then we use this IBU feature and toggled to 35 and hit scale. So we got these numbers in here. So now that we're all planned out, let's get brewing.
Okay, that's the sparge all done. It's all drained through the 15.5 litres or so, but it still looks like I'm not up to my 28 litres for the required amount for the boil. So I'm going to add in an extra 1 litre of sparge water. Just going to remove this. There's not much draining through now at the moment. It's just trickling or little drips. So I can remove this. And I can see that I'm up to around about 27 litres here. So I'm going to add in that 1 more litre of sparge water. And we are currently sitting at around 88 degrees Celsius. So it's still a little bit to go before we hit the boil. Yeah, so we'll rejoin in a second once we hit that boil. Right, we've reached the boil. Not very much of a rolling boil, but it seems to be at 100 degrees Celsius anyway. So we're going for a, a 90-minute boil. So let me set the timer on that. Okay, and first hop addition is 25 grams of Challenger. So I'm going to add them in straight away, and then we're going to add incrementally over the next minute or two the cane sugar in. So hops, in they go, and then the cane sugar, 240 grams. I'm just going to add this slightly bit by bit and just stir in, because I don't want any of it to stick to the bottom of the Grainfather here, so I'll just slowly add it in. Now, if you watched my previous video on Murphy's Irish Stout, you will have seen I was a little bit dubious about adding cane sugar for 90 minutes of the boil. Anytime I've ever added sugar before was towards the end of the boil to prevent it sticking to the bottom of the pot. But with the Murphy Irish Stout, I did add it at 90 minutes and I didn't have any particular issues, so I'll stick to the same strategy here again. And that's it. Give that a good stir. And that's it. I'll be back again at 15 minutes to add in the other hop additions and World Flock tablet as well. So I'm just going to let this boil away. Just back for a second. While that's boiling away, we're going to take a reading. Well, we already took a pre-boil gravity sample, so we're going to take a reading with the refractometer and see how we get on. So we are looking for, oh shit, we are looking for a pre-boil gravity of 1.043. So let's have a look and see where we're at. Absolutely spot on, bang on, 1.043. So bang on with the numbers. The 90-minute mash didn't throw things off too much. That was what was recommended, and that's what we've got. So we'll continue on with the boil. Just at 15 minutes left of the boil, so it's time to add in the last, or not the last two hop additions, but two of the final hop additions. There's another one to go in around 1 minute. So 14 grams of Challenger and 14 grams of East Kent Goldings. Bang those in. Just wanted to call out a couple of other things that I didn't include in the recipe. I'm also going to add in a World Flock tablet at 10 minutes remaining, and also I'm going to add in some yeast nutrient with about a minute remaining. So 4 mils of Murphy's Yeast Aid. Just going to add that in same time as the last hop addition with 1 minute remaining. Just before I do that, of course, as always, I'm going to attach the counterflow wort chiller and circulate for the last 4 or 5 minutes or so, just to sanitize or sterilize that wort chiller before we begin to recirculate the wort through it when we're cooling down into the fermenter. So that's where we're at the moment. All going well. Now that all the last additions have been added, I have done the whirlpool, as you have seen, reconnected the counterflow wort chiller, and let it sit for about 10 minutes in the Grainfather, just for all those hops to hopefully form in a cone at the end of the kettle here. So the next step is for me to attach the cold tap up to our counterflow wort chiller, start recirculating there, and then start the pump and put our wort into a fermenter, hopefully at around about 20 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to get cracking on that. Had a little bit of a panic there because the temperature didn't seem to be dropping, but I just found there was a little bit of kink in the hose there, preventing the cold water from running through. So it is dropping now. It's at about 41 degrees, but I've slowed the flow really slow, and it's just trickling into the fermenter here. So it's moving down really fast. We're down to 36, 35. So as I said, once we get down to 20, I'll try to dial that in, lock it, and then keep it at that all the way through until we fill up the fermenter. So as soon as that hits 20 degrees, I'm just going to speed up the flow a little bit. Seems to be hovering around about 21, which is kind of okay. Yeah, there we go at 20, so speed it up a little bit. And I think that we found our sweet spot. So 20 degrees is what it's going into the fermenter at, and that's what we wanted to maintain at. I'm just going to take a quick sample now as well. So whilst that's flowing in at 21 degrees, perfect time to take a sample or a gravity reading, and we'll see where we ended up. So what we were hoping for as a final gravity was 1.052, and if I sit that there and have a quick look, my initial impressions tell me we have spot on, but just let me confirm on that. Yeah, I'm going to call that as 1.052. It may be slightly above. There's a few bubbles there at the moment that are not allowing me to see that, but it's more or less in around where we need to be. So I'll just leave this flowing through. It's at 21 degrees at the moment, 20, 21. I'm happy enough with that. So I'll come back in a few moments when we're ready to pitch these. So the transfer from the Grainfather into the fermenter took a little bit longer than I was hoping. It also came in a little bit too high in terms of the temperature. It came in at a final temperature of around about 22 degrees Celsius. So I've hooked up the cooling pumps to the conical fermenter and set the temperature to 20 degrees. So that's been running for the last maybe around 30 minutes or so. So we're spot on now on 20 degrees. So it's time to pitch. So let's get going on that. I'm just going to pitch direct with the dry yeast. I'm not going to rehydrate. So there we go. So just one final point to note, the gravity that we did get in the end, it was actually 1.050, so just below what we were aiming for of 1.052. Not a disaster, like it's fairly close enough, but we'll see where we finish out at. So we'll probably be back here in around 7 to 10 days when we're fully finished fermenting, and then we'll be looking to transfer this into the keg. So we'll see, based off the final reading that we get, do we get anywhere close to the 5.1% ABV that we were looking for. So see you guys in about 7 to 10 days. So it's day 8, a quick update on where we're at. In reality, this beer finished out fermenting probably after around 3 days. The yeast that we used literally ate through the wort, and it was really finished fermenting 3 days, maybe 4 days, but I've let it sit until about 8 days now. So the next step in my process is I'm going to cold crash the beer. But before I do that, I need to add in some CO2 into the top of my fermenter, because once we start the cold crash, it's going to start to suck air into the fermenter, in through the airlock. So if I give it a blanket of CO2, hopefully that will just suck CO2 into the beer and there'll be no oxygen coming into the beer. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the Grainfather pressure transfer kit. So I'll attach that up to the top of the conical fermenter, add in some CO2 just gradually, maybe 1 psi for a few minutes. That will give it a layer of that CO2, which will hopefully push any oxygen that may be in there up out of the fermenter, and then, like I mentioned, as I start the cold crash, it will suck in the CO2, and that will provide a protective barrier essentially against any oxygen going into the beer. So first things first, I'm going to just give this a quick spray of Star San. I've already pre-sanitized this, so pop off that airlock. Okay, so once we've got it as tight as possible, I'll show you this, add the CO2 from our CO2 bottle here, and I'm going to open that up. So once I open that up, we can already see here, well, I hope you can see here, there's already some pressure going into the conical fermenter, and like I say, hopefully giving us that blanket of CO2 before we start the cold crash. Just so you're aware where we finished out, if you look at the information on the screen at the moment, you'll see, according to the tilt hydrometer, that this beer went down as low as 1.008, but I've actually checked that on the more trusty hydrometer, and I don't think you can probably see this here, but it's actually finished out bang on where we needed to do. So 1.013 is exactly where it's finished out. So I think that gives us an ABV of 4.9%, which is exactly what or in around what the recipe was predicting. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Just cold crash in a little while, and then the next step will be after that to add some gelatin in, and we'll add that in for 24 hours, let that settle through, and then we'll transfer through to the corny keg. Well, the time has come for the taste test between the clone version of Old Speckled Hen and the real version. I must admit that this taste test has taken a long time since the brew, so I think it's probably 4 months ago, 5 months ago since I brewed this beer, and just due to the COVID situation and other things in life taking over, it's taken a long time to get to this video. So let's dive straight in. First impressions of these two. Very, very similar in terms of colour. Both have that nice off-white frothy head. So I would say the actual Old Speckled Hen is a little bit clearer, a little bit more cloudiness to the clone version. So we'll go off aroma first with the clone version. I would say has that kind of very prominent malty backbone to it, not much hop aroma. The overwhelming aroma there is basically maltiness. So let me try the same with the actual Old Speckled Hen. Oh, it's a much deeper malty flavour in there, more kind of toffee. So much more pronounced in terms of the maltiness. It's definitely there in terms of similar in terms of the clone, but much more pronounced, deep malty kind of toffee flavour off the actual Old Speckled Hen. So let's actually try the taste of the real deal first of all. So again, that real deep malty flavour. I know in the recipe it describes it as butterscotch. That comes through in the taste as well. Little bit of hop bite in there, but not much. The main overwhelming character of this beer, I feel, is its maltiness and its kind of freshness. Nice kind of summer ale for on a warm day. Very refreshing. So again, let's try this with the clone version. Again, very, very similar. It's probably a little bit more subdued than the actual Old Speckled Hen, but still a lovely, fresh, refreshing pale ale. I'm actually quite pleased with that. As I mentioned, I brewed this beer many, many months ago. I can't even remember how many months ago it was. It went straight into the keg and I bottled a few bottles for tasting. The keg didn't last too long, and then, as I said, life just took over in terms of doing this actual video of the taste test. But I'm pleasantly surprised because it's been a long time since I had one of these, that it's maintained its kind of crispness, all of its flavour in there as well. So overall, a really, really good clone. Not exactly the same, but I don't think any of the clones that we brew on this show here are ever exactly the same, but very, very similar. So if you do like Old Speckled Hen as an English pale ale, I think you'll like this clone recipe as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please do take the time to like the video and subscribe, and add any comments on underneath the video as well, and let us know what you thought. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.